Yeah, so here we have the profile under the love grass position, and we look at the roots, and like roots are going down to like 40 centimeters, and up to 40 centimeters we see the black carbon depositions, but still it's like you see lots of red stuff, red clay still in between. And it's always good to see, like, it's the root activity that brings the carbon deeper in the profile. You see the trenches going down, it's not an even surface. But if we start at the top, then the first thing we do at the top, like the top 10 centimeters, which is our typical soil sample. And in this soil sample that Bruce sent away, the carbon was 4%, 3%. This one 3%.
Yeah, we can clarify the figures.
Yeah, so the carbon was 3%, and of that was 1.1 labile carbon. So if we look at 3% carbon is of course already good for our paddocks, because the average paddock in our country is now 1% carbon. And it's of course paddocks with lots of cultivation, and the more you cultivate, the more you disturb the soil, the more carbon goes up in the sky, oxidizes, goes up in the sky as CO2. So we always want to keep the carbon in the soil, but heavy grazing, overgrazing, and in a drought, bare surface, you lose carbon as well. So we want to have as much carbon in the soil because that's soil fertility. And now the other test in a profile like this is we look at the roots and we look at the soil, and then the soil should be nice and crumbly at the surface, like the crumb structure, because that's a very good structure. But as we see here, there's lots of small aggregates, and they get into the powder very quickly. So you can see very small powder, just the clay itself. So it means that the biological activity is still not that fancy here. I would have had more aggregates. The crumb structure remains there. And also, like here we can see, like the red, the black carbon level goes in up to like 35 centimeters. It stops like between 35 and 40, goes up and down. So that's where it's at this position. And it's then these grasses that get the roots into that area. And then we can twiggle here to see how many roots actually are there. You can see some roots going, very thin roots going down into a deeper profile, but nothing like the substantial roots like are already stop at a foot deep, and then there's only a few roots going deeper. So of course what we want is actively growing plants, and not just like the love grass, but other grasses, higher order grasses that are more vigorously growing and have deeper root systems and pump the carbon deeper into the soil. So the more primitive the grass species is, the more the soil is still in the state of being improved. And as soon as we get to a certain edge that the carbon is higher, then the love grass will disappear and other grasses will take over. And we get more forbs and clovers coming back depending on the pH. And Bruce will do pH at depth. And of course I've given this talk in different parts of the country, and then of course here people would say, 3% carbon, 3% is very good, so why is the love grass growing here if you say that love grass doesn't like carbon? Everything in nature is relative. Like if we do the same thing on the other side of the Great Dividing Range, then at 2% carbon the love grass types, the primitive grasses would already disappear. But because here at the coastal zone has always been so much humidity and rainfall and temperature, and no cold winters, etc., that those plants, the primitives, still grow at a higher carbon level, and that the more vigorous grasses come up like above 3% carbon. So everything in nature is always relative. That some species like to grow at lower carbon, at other places at higher carbon.